There was no sound, no dream you can remember. You simply surface all at once into the deep silence of the night, and something feels wrong. The house is too quiet. The darkness is too complete. The world has the strange, abandoned stillness of a place where you are the only one awake. And almost without thinking, you reach for your phone or glance at the clock, and there it is, the time you somehow already knew it would be. 3 a.m. It's uncanny how often it's exactly then. People all over the world report it, waking again and again in the small hours between 3 and 4 in the morning, gripped by a vague unease they can't explain. The hour even has names, old ones whispered across centuries and cultures. The witching hour, the dead of night, the devil's hour. The hour when, the stories say, the veil between worlds grows thin, when spirits walk, when the dark is at its most dangerous. For most of human history, this was simply a fact about the world, that deep night belonged to something other than us, and that to be awake in it was to be exposed. We tend to dismiss all that now as superstition. But here's what's strange. The fear isn't baseless. There really is something different about that hour. Your body knows it. Your mind knows it. And when you understand why, you'll see that our ancestors were reading a real signal. They just gave it the wrong name. The witching hour is not haunted by spirits. It's haunted by you, by what your own body and mind become in the deepest trough of the night. This is the liminal. Step into the space between. The hour with 1,000 fears. Let's start with the stories, because they're remarkably consistent. Across cultures and across time, deep night has been marked as a dangerous, charged time, and very often a specific window within it singled out as the worst. In European folklore, the witching hour was the dead of night, when witches, demons, and ghosts were said to be most powerful and most active, when magic worked best, and the boundary to the other world thinned to nothing. Later tradition narrowed it to a precise slot, roughly 3 to 4 in the morning, and called it the devil's hour, framed as a dark inversion, a mocking shadow of more sacred times of day. But this is not only a European idea. The instinct that the deep of night belongs to the dead, to spirits, to forces that don't walk in daylight, appears again and again around the world. Cultures that never met each other independently arrived at the same conviction, that there is an hour, deep in the night, when the living are not meant to be abroad, when the door to whatever lies beyond stands open, and the wise stay in their beds with the lamps lit. Now, you can hear all of that as nothing more than the imagination of people who had no electric light and no science of sleep, frightened of the dark and filling it with monsters. And there's truth in that. But it doesn't explain the most curious part. Why that hour? Why does the fear cluster in the small hours before dawn, rather than at midnight or any other time? Why do people across the world, including people today with every light blazing, still wake in that same narrow window with the same nameless dread? The answer isn't in the folklore. It's in the body. Because something genuinely does happen to you every single night right around that hour. And once you know what it is, the old stories start to look less like superstition and more like a misread map of a very real place. Why your body wakes you. Deep inside, you runs a clock. Not a metaphor, an actual biological clock. A rhythm wound into nearly every cell of your body, governing a daily cycle that rises and falls whether you're awake to feel it or not. We call it the circadian rhythm, and across the 24-hour day, it raises and lowers your temperature, your hormones, your alertness, your heartbeat, in a slow, sweeping tide. And that tide has a lowest point in the hours before dawn Typically somewhere around 3 to 4 in the morning for many people, your body reaches its deepest trough. Your core temperature sinks to its coldest of the entire day. Your alertness bottoms out. The hormones that will eventually lift you toward waking haven't yet begun their climb. In almost every measurable way, this is the hour when your body is at its lowest ebb, the furthest from the bright, defended, fully powered state of midday. It is, quite literally, the dead of your night. It's also a natural seam in your sleep. As the night goes on, your sleep grows lighter and your dreaming stages grow longer. By the small hours, you're spending more time near the surface, in the thin, fragile sleep that's easiest to slip out of. A small noise, a shift in temperature, a full bladder, a stray surge of stress. Any of these can tip you over the edge into waking, and so you surface again and again in roughly the same window, the hour when your sleep is lightest and your body is coldest and least defended. You're not being woken by spirits. You're being woken by the architecture of your own night. There's a darker statistical shadow to this hour too, one our ancestors would have felt without ever charting it. The body at its lowest ebb is the body at its most vulnerable. The pre-dawn hours are when the human system is least resilient, when those who are gravely ill are statistically more likely to slip away. For all of human history, before clocks and before science, people living close to birth and death would have sensed this, that the deep of night was when the frail were lost, when the threshold between living and dying seemed somehow nearer. They didn't have the language of circadian biology, but they could feel that this hour carried death in it, and they named what they felt. The mind in the dead of night. But waking in the small hours isn't only a matter of the body. Something happens to the mind at 3 a.m. that happens at no other time, and it may be the truest source of the witching hour's terror. Think about the conditions. You wake into total darkness and total silence. There is nothing to see and nothing to hear. The entire scaffolding of ordinary life, other people, daylight, tasks, conversation, the thousand small distractions that hold your attention through the day, all of it is simply gone. You are alone with your own mind, in a sensory void, in a body that is cold and depleted and not yet ready to be awake. And we've seen, on this channel, what a mind does with a void. It fills it. Stripped of real input, the brain turns inward and amplifies whatever is already there. In the empty dark of 3 a.m., with no daylight evidence to push back against it, the mind reaches for its oldest material. Fear, worry, dread. This is why the thoughts that come at 3 in the morning are so reliably the darkest ones you'll have all day. The same problem that feels manageable at noon becomes catastrophic in the small hours, not because anything has changed, but because the mind that's examining it is depleted, undistracted, and primed by the dark to expect threat. The night doesn't bring you wisdom. It brings you your fears with the volume turned all the way up and nothing to drown them out. And just as in sleep paralysis, where the brain manufactures a presence to fill the empty room, the unguarded 3 a.m. mind populates the silence. Every creak of the house becomes a footstep. Every shadow leans toward a shape. The sense of being watched, of not being alone, descends easily in that hour. Not because anything is there, but because a frightened mind in a sensory void will always furnish the emptiness with something. The witching hour is the hour your mind is least able to tell the difference between the dark outside and the dark within. The threshold in time. There's one more layer, and it's the one that makes this hour belong to the liminal. Every threshold we've explored has been a boundary between waking and sleep, between the familiar and the strange, between one room and the next, between the human and the almost human. The witching hour is a threshold too, but a different kind. It's a threshold in time. Think about where 3 a.m. actually sits. It is the hinge of the night, past the midnight that ended yesterday, but long before the dawn that will begin today. It belongs to neither day. It is the deepest part of the gap between them, the dead centre of the in-between, when the whole world that gives your life its shape has dissolved. The social world is gone. Everyone you know is unconscious. The structure of the day is gone. No schedule, no light, no markers. By that hour you are unmoored from time itself, floating in a slot that belongs to no day and no one. The purest experience of the in-between that ordinary life offers. And this is exactly why every culture planted its ghosts and its devils there. Humans have always sensed that the boundaries are where the rules break down, that the crossroads, the doorway, the twilight, the threshold are charged and dangerous places. The dead of night is the great threshold of the day, the seam between one date and the next, and so it became inevitably the hour when the door to the other world was said to open. Our ancestors weren't being foolish. They were applying the deepest pattern in human thought. The in-between is where the veil thins, to time itself. And they were half right. Something does thin at 3 a.m. It just isn't the veil between worlds. It's the veil between you and your own undefended mind. Part 5. The hour you're most open. So the next time you wake into that silent, uneasy dark and somehow know before you even check that it's 3 a.m., you don't have to reach for the supernatural to explain the dread. You can recognize where you are. You are in the trough of your own daily tide, at your coldest and least defended. You are awake in the lightest, most fragile stretch of your sleep. You are alone in a sensory void that your mind is busily, helplessly filling with its darkest available material. And you are floating in the deepest part of the night's threshold, unmoored from the daylight world that normally tells you who and where and when you are. Of course it feels haunted. You have arrived, stripped of every defense, in the most liminal hour of the human day. The reassurance is real. The hour is not dangerous, the presence is not there, and the catastrophic thoughts that feel so true at 3 a.m. will look manageable again the moment the light returns and your body climbs back out of its trough. Nothing is coming for you in the dark. You are simply meeting yourself with the lights off. But underneath the reassurance is the same quiet revelation this channel keeps circling back to. The confident, solid self you are by daylight, the one who isn't afraid of the dark, who keeps its fears in proportion, is not your fixed and only self. It's a construction held up by light and routine and the presence of other people. Take all of that away, drop your body into its coldest hour, and a different self surfaces, older, rawer, closer to the animal that once huddled in the dark and listened for what might be out there. The witching hour doesn't show you ghosts. It shows you the version of yourself that lives just beneath the daylight one. The self that has always known the dark is not safe. And every night, for 1 hour, in the silence, you are introduced to it again. Outro. The haunted hour, the almost human face, the presence in the paralyzed dark. They keep arriving at the same truth. The self and the world you trust by daylight are built, held together by light and structure. And in the in-between hours, you can feel how thin that scaffolding really is. There are more thresholds to cross. The empty room that feels wrong the moment you enter it. The certainty, in a moment of crisis, that someone unseen is walking beside you. The lonely places folklore filled with danger. The crossroads. the forest's edge, the door. We'll open each of them in turn. If this gave you a name and a reason for that 3 a.m. dread, subscribe and stay with us. New documentaries every Wednesday and Saturday. There's a whole country at the edge of consciousness, and almost no one ever maps it. This is TheLiminal. Step into the space between.